let's go ahead and we can kind of dive into the topic for discussion today and the panelists as well. So first off, hello everyone. Matt Volm, CEO and co-founder of RevOps Co-op. For those of you that are not already in the community, we have a global community of roughly 12,000 plus folks who are all passionate about revenue operations. We'll throw the link into the chat. If you're not a member, would love to have you join. We have a free membership option and a paid membership option as well. And we do a lot of digital events and other things to kind of help our members on a regular basis. The other thing I'll plug real quick, RevOps AF 2024, our annual conference taking place in sunny San Diego at the end of May this year, where actually both Jen and Trevor are going to be speaking and doing a panel. And we've got, I think, 30 plus different sessions and kind of speakers, and we'll have some really great experiences around the event as well. So we'll throw that link into the or into the chat here too. Early bird tickets are available through the end of February, so February 29th this year, and then the price will go up to kind of general admission thereafter. But with that, I will stop and get into the topic for discussion today, which is how Watershed has reduced emissions through the power of data. So for those of us who have ever wondered or questioned, I guess, about the true impact of kind of RevOps and the results, the outcomes, right, that we can produce. We're going to be tying some of these really exciting things like data management, data quality projects to things like reducing emissions with the power of data. And so today I have Jen, who is the CEO over at Go Nimbly, official kind of RevOps co-op partner and RevOps consulting firm who has a bunch of incredible clients. And I've also got Trevor, who is on the RevOps team over at Watershed. And so before we dive into kind of the topic and the content, I've warned you both about this already. So I want to know one non-RevOps, non-work, non-professional related thing about you. So I'm going to actually, Trevor, I'm going to start with you on this. Give us a lowdown on you, my friend. Drop one interesting kind of personal fact.
You want to just know the personal fact, or do I have to give a bio too?
Do both. Let's do both.
Okay. So Trevor here, everybody. Good to see you. This is my first RevOps Co-op webinar, so super pumped to be here with Jen, talking to you guys about data and reducing carbon emissions. I've been at Watershed. I've been at RevOps for the last 5 or 6 years. Been at Watershed for the last 1.5 years. Before that, I was at a company called Qualia, working RevOps. I see a few Qualians in the chat, cool. So shout out to y'all. And yeah, a fun fact about me, I still love the smell of gasoline at gas stations. I like a lot of people grow out of it, but I still love it every time.
I remember as a kid that was like something that like smelt. I don't know. It was like it was a pleasure to have those fumes, right?
Absolutely.
Wow.
I
have no context to this. Do children like the smell of? I don't have kids. Do kids love gas?
Well, I'm also guessing. I mean, Jen, you're in Brooklyn. Do you even do you even own a car?
I don't own a car.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
No, I don't even know what gas smells like.
Yeah. There you go.
That's wild.
Yeah. Well, you gotta follow up to that now, Jen. So give us a quick kind of professional spiel on you, and then sure. One fun, kind of interesting, maybe non-gasoline related fact about yourself too.
Amazing. Wow. We always think about like what's a unique gift to get a client. I'm gonna send you a little pint of gas. It's expensive too, so it's actually kind of nice. Yeah. Well, my name is Jenny Gartwa. Lots of friendly folks in the chat, so nice to see lots of friends and colleagues in there. I run Go Nimbly. We're a revenue operations consultancy. Started it almost 10 years ago. My passion and career started in marketing automation. Quickly, I started realizing anything I did top of funnel was affecting sales teams. Got really obsessed with sales and marketing alignment. Why did these two teams that should be really aligned? Why is it that they don't speak the same language, and why are they mad at each other and not at finance? So we started Go Nimbly we had the tagline before RevOps was a thing, and we called it Unifying the Business Stack. And we were really obsessing over what are like the technical or data issues or integration issues that are getting in the way of essentially a seamless experience between kind of sales and marketing for your customers. And from there, we got really like good and are excited about kind of data architecture, how to integrate systems, how to make, for lack of a better word, your internal bullshit not get in the way of a good customer experience. So, fun fact about me, other than running Go Nimbly and working with like really incredible B2B SaaS companies, I also own a game company. I should have a game with me to plug. Ugh, can't believe I don't have
Yeah.
it. But I make board games. So when I'm not at like B2B conferences, I'm at like really nerdy game conferences, selling, $25 games. So it's like fun to balance out essentially marketing these two companies that sell, I would call, opposite products.
Uh-huh. That's awesome. Yeah, a physical good, more kind of direct to consumer, and then we've got
Yeah.
kind of services
Yeah.
on the B2B
Nothing you
side.
can
So
hold. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. No, that's awesome. Well, so we've got everything from gasoline to board games, which is awesome. And so
Yep.
so Jen, I'll kind of turn it over to you to get us kind of started on this. I love uh the topic because again,
Yeah.
especially as I think all of us have a tendency to dive into the details, and one can be really hard to kind of link a lot of the day-to-day, week-to-week sort of stuff to not just outcomes that are like business outcomes that are happening at
Totally.
our companies, but I think the thing we forget about is like businesses exist to have an impact on the world, right? And there's always a
Hmm.
stereotype of like you know changing the world and
Yep.
making the world a better place, right? And so I think this is one of those things where so a great example of how RevOps actually impacts like the true outcomes, and in this case for Watershed, right, reducing emissions with the power of data. So I'll turn it over to
Yep.
you to kind of get us started on that.
Yeah, I love that because I think that it is hard to get that feel good mission from a company that maybe like, I don't know, does a PM tool or an integration. Like this is truly one of those that it feels good to do work with Watershed. And I know, when you ask your parents who your favorite, child is and they don't answer, but it's not Katie. Well, Watershed is my favorite customer, and I'll just say it out loud. I'm not supposed to. Because one, I get that good feeling, right? Like I do feel like we're making impact and it's bigger than, the work that we're doing every day. And then two, I think if you are ever wondering how to get the most out of your consulting partner, Trevor is a good person to talk to because he knows how to, build relationships with us. He tells us the impact we're making, explains to us the bigger vision. And we're going to talk about, the story of the work that we did together. And a lot of times when you hear a story, it's a bit of an eye roll, but like there really is one here. So I'm super excited. So I think we did intros. Oh, Trevor, tell them that I'm your favorite vendor. I said you're my favorite client.
Jen is our favorite vendor.
Thank you. Appreciate it. And so we already did our intro, but a little bit of insight into kind of the work that we've done together is, we've been really thinking about how do we enable our go-to-market teams? How do we enable, beyond that, like beyond the thinking about just sales reps, our marketing team, our product teams, et cetera. And what's really interesting about the work that we did is that sometimes the best, biggest, areas of change are actually rooted in a lot of simplicity. So what we're going to talk about today doesn't have like a lot of fancy tech. It doesn't have like a big growth hack or a new go-to-market like motion. And the reason why I think this was really a successful project and that we were able to, spoiler alert, normalize a bunch of data and get it in the right hands of the right people is because we're working with a company that is willing to take risks, that needs to move fast because they're up against something bigger than hitting a revenue target. And that's Watershed, right? This is a company that's not afraid to move fast, is willing to take risks, doesn't want to wait for a tool implementation or, something that's like broader. And, it's easier when you are more risk averse and when you're working essentially to fight climate change to move quickly. So I think with that, Trevor, I'd love to have you share a bit of the
Yeah.
context of like, why is it that we have so much urgency?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Jen. So just to ground the conversation and the mission that we're here to solve. This is a chart of average daily surface temperatures across the world between 1979 and 2022. And just a footnote, the reason why it rises in the middle is because most of the land mass in the world is in the northern hemisphere, and that's when the summer season is. Jen, go to the next slide. So that faint squiggly line above it, that is the average daily surface temperature in 2006. This is when Inconvenient Truth came out. This is also like a year before the UN IPCC won the Nobel Peace Prize for speaking with such clarity about the climate crisis and the importance of it. And then the next slide, this is basically filling in all the years between all the years between 1940 and 2022. Some are above the dotted line or the solid line, the darker line. Some are below, but in general, everything's moving up, and which is the problem we're here to solve. The next slide, Jen. This is 2023. You see this chart start to look pretty crazy. Starting in June of last year, every day, week, and month was the hottest in recorded history. And then if you go to the next slide, Jen, by the end of 2023, we were just about 1.5 degrees Celsius above the pre-industrial average, which is, that for a long time, scientists have been telling us that is the beginning of what they've been calling the red zone. And we were knocking on the door of it in 2023. And then on November 17th, 2023, the day where we crossed the 2 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial average, which, so 2023 was the hottest year ever recorded. We reached temps that climate scientists have been telling us, or warning us about for decades now. And it was probably one of the least bad years of our lifetime. If you go to the next slide, Jen, this is where, I have 2 kids and 2 young kids. And this is the thing that scares the shit out of me. Sorry for cursing. That black line is 2024, where we are year to date. You see that it's already starting to jump above last year and every year before. So this is the problem at Watershed we're solving for, and this is what drives us out of bed in the morning. Climate is the epic force of our time. Regardless of what you believe is a source of the climate crisis, it is undoubtedly the epic force that our generation collectively on this call, we have we're the last shot in terms of the change that we can make to reverse our trajectory. And next slide, not only is it the epic force of our time, but it's the epic market force of our time. We have governments, regulators, enterprises across the world rallying to solve this problem and reverse our trajectory. It's presenting a market moment, not only for Watershed, but for, the global economy. How do we approach this problem with speed and scale? And if, at Watershed specifically, if we are able to meet the market moment, then we have a strong chance of being the neck that turns the head in decarbonizing the global economy, which is very exciting. This slide shows just a few of the ways that we do that. We help enterprises collect and manage all of their data that serves as inputs for a carbon footprint, and then we give them ways to report and act on that carbon footprint across the business, to make tighten the feedback loop between the sustainability team and the rest of the decision makers and make meaningful progress to reduce their carbon footprint. The next slide, Jen. So our mission at Watershed is our goal by 2030 is to reduce global emissions by 2030. That top number on the top left, we're currently at about 527 million tons of CO2 emissions under management. That's how we track progress towards our mission. And we do that by partnering with some of the largest, most complex, most notable brands and enterprises across the global economy. And I'm sure you've recognized some of these logos up here. If I would have flashed this slide up a year ago, you would see the Spotify's, the Airbnbs, and the flashy tech companies, which got our foot in the door, but realized that we didn't, it wasn't setting us up for success to really make the change that we were seeking to make.
And first off, Trevor, like that gave me chills. So like, thank you for like reminding. I'm sure I'm not the only one here that's like having that oh shit moment. I think it's like we need that reminder ongoing because it's so easy to just get wrapped up in moving along and not realizing that that graph showed it. We are at the worst that we've ever been. And I think what Trevor's talking about is like it's real. Like a year ago when the slides were up, you can think of Watershed as SF based, very well connected. Where did the founders come from? Was it? Oh my gosh, I'm not gonna. Yeah, I was gonna say Stripe, and I was like, I don't want to say the wrong one. So like ex Stripe, very well connected, and so they started to onboard all of their customers within the places where they were connected. And as you can imagine, SaaS companies don't have a huge footprint. The footprint that we need to be solving for are airlines and consumer goods and manufacturing and these companies that create a lot of waste. And so needing to shift our focus. It's the crazy part is this company could walk into their board and hit their revenue target, but they wouldn't make the climate impact that they were founded on and that the employees really care about and that they're pushing. And so that was a moment of like, hey, put a mirror up and realize like what are the industries that we're focusing on and how do we make sure to hit that kind of CO2 emissions reduction that we want to. And yes, like all revenue is good revenue. Like we love hitting our targets, and Watershed keeps hitting them and it's amazing. But how do we make sure that across the business people understood what industries we were supposed to be going after and where we're going to make the biggest impact? And as many of you probably know within RevOps, it's really hard to do that when you have a bazillion vendors populating a bazillion different fields and your marketing team doesn't know which one to segment on and your product team maybe doesn't even have access to those fields. And we really can't point everyone in the right direction if we don't give them that data. So, to tell a little bit of a story and chime in here with me, Trevor, for sure. But, I think the company was feeling a little bit like Charlie here. Was that his name? I just like blanked.
Yeah,
Charlie, right? Okay.
Yeah, you got
Awesome.
it.
Like, is that Charlie or did I just name him? Kind of drowning in data points, right? From like 5 industry fields, multiple revenue fields, multiple employee counts, and on top of that, intent data from a bunch of different sources. And what it
Just to add to
became,
that, we
yeah,
were pulling from like company 10Ks on like, to validate revenue data, investment
yep.
data. And like a lot of these enterprises would post like sustainability reports on their website. So it was like scraping websites to see how ambitious these companies were and, to help measure like propensity to buy, these sorts of things. Carry on.
Yeah. So it was like not only our typical Zoom infos and Cognisms and Apollos of the world, but on top of it, a bunch of CSV files and very smart, teams that were building kind of scraping tools, et cetera. But as a rep, it's pretty frustrating because they weren't really confident that they can use this data and like fearful of, hopping on a call and referencing it when it wasn't normalized, it wasn't at their fingertips. And could they really trust what the systems were saying? And so what we wanted was to arm our go-to-market team to be able to hop on a call with a customer or with a prospect and wow them with the insight that they have about their industry and about where the company is. But instead, you've got this kind of low confidence where they would rather hop on a call and maybe ask questions than confidently reference the data that we have. And that isn't even just like it's not, that's one scenario is they just don't do it. The second scenario is, your best AEs and SDRs are like this sweet cat where they're searching kind of multiple data points, finding new accounts, deduping, searching their websites, looking at the hierarchy, trying to pull together different intent signals, exactly what you were talking about, Trevor, from like 10Ks, company websites, et cetera, to be able to hop on that call and, look smart, quite frankly.
Yep.
And then, lastly, it wasn't just the sales team that was, kind of dealing with this. That's a good kind of micro story. But if we zoom out, it was the marketing team segmenting on disparate data points and not being, certain of it. It was the product team not able to confidently look at usage by industry. And so we knew that these data silos that we had were keeping the teams from making decisions. And, how are they supposed to take risks in order to do that? And, I think, the thought exercise and actually, Trevor, I wanted to bump it to you. You also had the product team kind of leveraging this data.
Yeah. Yeah.
What was
So
their use case?
yeah, so for product, it's, we only want to assign territories to sales that to really fit our serviceable addressable market. So like each industry in the global space, like across the world, will have different ways of measuring their carbon footprint. And we need to make sure that our product is like fit to serve those industries before we want to just assign those accounts to sales and have them kind of trip over themselves on the phone. So normalizing this data really presented like a really, productive conversation with product team on, all right, here are the industries that our product is able to serve right now, 3 months, 6 months, 9 months down the line, so we can, sequence the territory assignment to seed the market ahead of time, but make sure that we're not like too far out over our skis and to impact sales efficiency.
Yeah. So I think that's like the thought exercise here is the answer as simple as aligning teams by taking all this kind of disparate data and serving it up in a simple way. Like, could we essentially get out of the way of these teams by making sure that marketing can segment on industry equals media? Like, could it be as simple as giving them that data, or that the product team can slice usage by industry, or we can serve them up and say, look at all this intent we're finding. Look at the intent by industry. This new industry has a ton of intent. Could that, sway their decisions on which features to prioritize? And it really comes down to understanding, I don't know, the 5 to 10 data points that the entire company runs on and that makes decisions on, and serving that up in a way that is our language and really easy to consume. And so we're going to show off some of that work, but here's the outcome. We basically turned our very frustrated, doubtful reps and we made them really confident, right? And we made them excited to do outbound because they had that kind of data. And we're putting them and other people in the organization in a position to have really meaningful interactions with our customers. And, at the end of the day, what did that look like? It looked like an industry field that you could, look at and understand. So the outcome feels quite simple, but the work to get there, it took prioritizing and making that intent to say, hey, this is important. So let's go into the solution a little more. I'll give it to you, Trevor.
Yep. So what we did was we first, we currently, or at the time, we were currently partnering with ZoomInfo and Cognism to basically define or gather accounts in our serviceable addressable market. We added a few others. Dun & Bradstreet, we all know, and then Preqin is specific to like financial institutions that are imposing investor pressure on their portfolio companies to reduce their carbon footprint. So that was a huge signal for us. Scraping all these vendors for our addressable market made sure that we had all the accounts that we could address, and then prioritizing, dedupe, aligning them. So investing in the tools and the infrastructure, some of which we'll talk about here, to make sure that we don't have dupes in the system, or minimizing those. We're aligning parent-child at scale, and we're prioritizing via some of the normalization stuff that we're talking about. And then bringing those intent signals from ZoomInfo, 6sense. The science-based targets is a very an RE100 are very climate specific, but the gist here is like, what are the signals in the market or in your space and how can you bring them into Salesforce so that you can use those for territories, you can use those for marketing automation, etc. So yeah, so that was our process here.
Love it. And The cool thing about what we built, which we are going to go into Salesforce and see it, is you could replace these logos with other logos. Like we're essentially building the data model in the machine to normalize, and we don't care where the sources come from, and it's super flexible in that way.
Yeah, but bumper sticker there is just like trying to bring more signal, less noise to the sales team.
Yeah, and that's big. It's not necessarily about the raw data points as much as it is, is this a true signal?
Yeah.
Lovely. So here's a couple of things. And if any of you know Andy Moat, he was the CEO of Gated, is now over at Carta. He just made a post about this. So I did steal some of his language. So I told him I'd give him a shout out. But and this is also something that Trevor taught me around really thinking about first principles. So when you're, designing something, making sure that you understand like what are the building blocks, what are the must-haves, what are we building on top of before we get fancy. And these are things that, I recommend anybody thinking about, their data and data normalization to think about simplicity. Ultimately the outcome is like a field you can trust and understand, and that is in the hands of the right people. Multi-vendor, gone are the days where you're picking one. Different vendors are good at different data points. So making sure that you can absorb that. Having an easy override. There will be things that, vendors are not always accurate. So, you should be able to, as an operator, say, you know what, it's not industry A, it's B, especially if your business has unique ways which they look at industries. Making sure it's like ongoing. Demographics change. You can't just update your data and enrich it once. So like we want to be updating it all the time. I mentioned this already, but a flexible system that we can swap vendors, look at multiple data points, etc., and that you're integrating it, into other tools. An easy one would be don't let it just sit in your Salesforce. Make sure the marketing automation has all those fields. But beyond that, we mentioned product and other teams that, need to be able to consume it. And then I'm gonna, before we go right into the solution, which I'm hoping people are antsy for, just real talk, like data management is changing right now. And so what we're going to show you is how us as a RevOps team, and to give context, Watershed isn't like a Series B, like they just raised C kind of area. So it gives you a bit of a sense of where they are. But we know that there are bigger ways to manage data, that, a lot of Snowflake is beginning to be the middle of the drawing. Instead of 10 years ago when I first started, you always drew Salesforce in the middle and you wanted to pump all data into Salesforce. And that we've got, ELT and ETL systems, and all that is changing. That said, we made the decision of saying we got to move fast. We want to own this. And, at the place that we are, we're not going to try to build this all in a kind of big data orchestration manner, and instead have it at the fingertips and own it within Salesforce. So keep that in mind. If you're working at a big enterprise level company, this same solution and same mindset might live in different tools. Trevor, anything you want to add before we kind of jump into more details?
Nope, nailed it.
Cool. Awesome. Lovely. Okay, so we're talking about like when we thought about the data that we were consuming, there's definitely firmographic, which is a lot of the examples that we've given. And the way we think about this is that you have multiple sources and lots of data points, and what you want to do is prioritize the one that you think is the most trustworthy and normalize it. Like that's the big idea, is like ZoomInfo, Cognism, D&B, and everything else is going to give you different industry values, and they're going to use their nomenclature. How do we get that in a way that we can consume it as a business? Typically, the outcome is one field, right? Or like one data point. On the intent side, which we also did sprinkling in, is usually you're collecting third party. It could also be from your marketing team. It could be on your website. And you've got lots of data points, from like search terms to being on a website to joining an event to category search to comparisons, whatever that, intent data. For Trevor and Watershed, it might mean something like, hey, I made a commitment to, be net zero by 2030. Like all of that is the intent that we're collecting. And we're not typically normalizing that into one field. We want to see all of it, right? These are all like important signals and moments. And so that we're architecting to be able to consume like, okay, what's the story here, as opposed to give me one outcome. So that gives you different, things to think about. And we're going to focus on firmographic because we think it's like you can get the same mindset, and we can demo it in a few minutes. But keep in mind, maybe at RevOps AF, we can have a conversation when everybody here buys a ticket. That intent is a different beast. So let's talk a little firmographic. And Trevor, do you want to take this slide a little bit?
Yeah,
I put
sure.
Jen in the notes, but I think we said you would.
Yeah. All good.
Sorry.
Yeah, so this gets to kind of the funnel slide that we showed earlier, but taking ZoomInfo, Cognizant, our third-party data providers, we have specific fields for both providers. So you'll see in the demo we have a section or fields for ZoomInfo, fields for Cognizant to write to, and then once those are in Salesforce, then we do some prioritization. So if, in our case, if the account is in North America, then we prioritize ZoomInfo. If the account is in Europe, for example, we prioritize Cognizant data. And then we're tracking changes to these fields, as well as we're normalizing the industry. So, we mentioned this earlier, but we in like the sustainability space have a standard on how to categorize companies by industry. It's called the SASB standard. It's basically, how do I think about a Colgate Palmolive and from a sustainability perspective, and how do you categorize that company by industry? So we map all of the values from ZoomInfo, industry values and Nike's codes, and all of those values from Cognizant, and map them into the SASB standard so we can all speak the same language, essentially. And then, yeah, I think that pretty much sums up this slide. Jen, anything to add there?
Well, that was actually huge. And I would say that Watershed had a leg up on making some of these decisions because we had a framework for how we think about industries. So those values, that we're going to use, I'm sure that many of you have been in a discussion where you're trying to figure out what do we call certain industries and what is that list of industries that we're going to base on. Honestly, I think the SASB list is great. And anybody that's doing this project, go take a look at it, SASB. We can send it up as follow-up. I think they're great. They basically think of things as like a thematic sector and then, a sector in an industry, a subsector in an industry. And I found it very compelling and a really great format. But if you nail that, right, if you nail those decisions and get everybody speaking the same language, that helps. Because I've found when we've done this project in the past, coming up with a list takes like a bunch of work. And so that was a lovely thing that SASB did for us. Cool. So I'm going to jump into a demo. Oh, you put that in the chat. Thank you, Trevor.
Yep.
And I'm going to stop sharing real quick and reshare my Salesforce.
And just want to ask on that, Trevor, too, you mentioned, so it sounded like with ZoomInfo and Cognizant, you were still, like, even if you were piping in the same data point, right, let's just say like industry, right,
Yep.
or whatever it might be,
Yep.
that you were capturing those in Salesforce in separate properties or fields. And then from there, you had the like the rule-based stuff and the other transformations that you were doing to determine how those mapped into other sort of properties or fields, right? Instead of doing that maybe before it wound up in the tool
Exactly.
or a system.
Yeah, there's some tools where you can do that sort of normalization before it hits Salesforce, but we wanted it all in Salesforce so we could see, hey, how did this value actually, like, where do we get this value, and look at the relationships between different providers. So it's all in Salesforce, and then we do the normalization and the prioritization there.
Yeah, makes sense, because I can see otherwise you wind up in a spot if you do all that beforehand and then it winds up in Salesforce, you're like, well, wait,
Why?
is that right?
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
Am I sure? Like, what does that other value actually look like? And then
the sales reps
don't
can't
know.
do that if it's not in Salesforce. Yep.
Yep. Cool. So I've got a fake little account here. I think I decided to throw it back to Acme and a little call to all the Salesforce trainings I once did. And, when we look at this is the outcome, really. Like, our team can just see these kinds of fields. One field for all of these, they're all being normalized in the background, but the entire company can trust and leverage all of these fields, and they're based on every vendor and all of our rules, etc. So one of the other things you'll see, this is not something that every rep sees, by the way. I've got like kind of an admin view, but we have every field, right? So like we know the ZoomInfo, values, and we have the DMB values, and I put in some Cognizant ones for the sake of the demo. I like overwrote it to say it was a different industry. Imagine Cognizant thought this was in retail, and ZoomInfo thought this was in media. And so what we see here is like, look, because I've got EMEA as the as the region, it's going to pull the Cognizant fields and say, hey, we believe that Cognizant has better coverage in EMEA, so let's take the EMEA values. If I were, and I am in Sandbox, so it goes a little bit clunkier here, but you get the gist. If I were to change it to North America and give it a little refresh, you don't have to do this in prod, but I have them running in async for those of you that want to nerd out. And so you can see it's updated to media because it's grabbing the Zoom info values. So again, as an end user, I don't have to worry about, looking at Zoom info or looking at Cognizant. We're doing that work for you. And imagine we just don't trust this data. Maybe this company is tagged wrong in Zoom info, or, the way that our company looks at this is different. We have an ability to override that data. So we have this kind of override button, and you could either override industry because it's a kind of a specific thing. There's also other information I'll show you if you're kind of curious, but I can go in here and be like, actually, this is airlines. Override that, override those values. Cool. And if I refresh, that one I didn't need to refresh. You saw it already. And now it's set as air and transportation. And I know that it's been kind of overwritten. So that's really at the end of the day, what it ends up looking like and how it ends up, being consumed. In the back end, if we want to get real nerdy here, let me pull up a few things about how it's working. All right. So let's take a look at a data. Actually, let me go into the data enrichment here. So we have this dashboard that basically tells us, okay, how's our data enrichment working? And we have really great, this is Sandbox, but even in production, we have almost no accounts that are not mapped from an industry perspective. So it's been really amazing, but we keep a track on this dashboard to be able to see, hey, do we have accounts where we haven't normalized these values? Right now I'm looking at industry, but you can think the same thing with number of employees, revenue, et cetera. We also keep track, you can see Acme showed up here. We also keep track of the ones where we've done overrides. It's important for us to know that we overrode X and to review these to make sure to remove them if we need to. And then down here, you can actually just see a table. These are what we call all of our data enrichment mappings. So I'm going to open one as an example, but these records are our logic. It's us changing, for example, in this one, it's us changing if we have a value in Cognizant industry, we then take a look at this value, aviation and aerospace, and we map it to what we believe is the right one, which are these. So these are our accepted values. So we basically have a mapping table that we keep up, and we can say, hey, if it's value A, give us value B so that it's in our accepted terms. One quick call out that makes this cool, but also harder technically, is this field right here is can be changed to anything. So this is a super flexible model where we could do any field, any custom field, really, or actually any field in the system, and grab values from it. So we could do it on the NICS code, we could do it on the SIC code, but we can scale this to department and role and anything, on the account itself. Okay. And then what we have, and I won't get too nerdy here because honestly, this is where where I start becoming less good nerdy. But we have this flow that's running in the background. This gets launched from a different flow, which basically says, has this account been edited or created with these values that we normalize? And if it does, it goes through a bunch of nodes where we look at, I'm doubling down on industry and sector, but we do the same thing with number of employees. We do it with annual revenue, et cetera. And what we're doing is we're basically saying, great, at the beginning, we grab all the values. We say, great, let's just take a snapshot of all the values that we care about. And then we figure out if we need to calculate them. Primarily here, we're looking to make sure that there's no override. If there's no override, if there is an override, we say, okay, we're just going to take the override value. Otherwise, this is the only reason why we have to do an Apex action is that cool feature I showed you that you can use a custom API name to normalize any field. If you weren't doing that, you wouldn't have to do this. You could do it in a flow step. But basically, we're grabbing all that logic, all those, we're grabbing all of those records, those multi-vendor records that I showed you with all the logic. We're finding the one that matches the data that we have, and then we're setting that new value. And we keep doing that across the board for all of our logic. The fun feature that I'll give Emmy a shout out, he's in the chat, that he built that's cool is for annual revenue, a lot of vendors will give it to you in USD. We actually not only grab that value, but we get the exchange rate and we set it based on the value of that actual company. So yeah, it's okay if you glanced over that. I wouldn't be able to build this either, but art of the possible, you can do this. I've also seen, if anybody comes from a more of a marketing automation background, I've also seen this built in what we used to call contact washing machines inside of marketing automation, where you have all these programs running in the background. Salesforce is much more effective in speed and in doing it, and you don't have the data going back and forth. But just so you know, it's doable in a variety of different places. So again, your outcome, normalized fields the whole business can use, and a really flexible system to be able to swap in and out your logic and make sure that you're not just absorbing ZoomInfo or Cognism's verbiage and nomenclature, that you're really owning these values, and it makes it much easier to report. Whew,
Yeah.
okay. What
Well,
are your thoughts, Matt?
Well, one, so I was thinking back to the first principles that you brought up, and when I heard you mention a lot of them, but I also saw them in action, right? So you brought up simplicity, you brought up flexibility, you brought up the ability to override, at the very beginning, right? I saw all of those very clearly in action. And then the other thing that jumped out at me is, again, because we were talking about data management, is you hear a lot about people saying, oh, my data quality is a mess, or it's really
Right.
poor. And that obviously, like, we're all using data to generate insights, right? We talked about how Watershed was looking to use those. And I think the thing, I don't know why this doesn't necessarily come natural, but is like, we'll use, right, like you had a dashboard, so like use analytics to help identify where you might have data quality issues,
Totally.
right? So don't think that, like, oh, well, I've got these like data quality things that I need to fix before like we can move on to the, like the insights and the stuff that we want to use. Think about like one of the solutions to solving your data quality problems can be analytics and insights around
Very
where you
meta.
have poor data, where you have poor data quality, right? But like your mind doesn't, I don't know, at least for me, doesn't naturally go there. So yeah, I loved all of that. I guess I'm curious, like it all looked very beautiful, elegant, and like I said, very clearly attached to like the first principles. What were some of the like the gotchas or the things that got in the way or challenges? Like what were some surprises, I guess, that popped up as you were working through all of this that you didn't originally expect at the beginning?
Ooh, Trevor, can I have you go first? Oh, you're on mute.
Sorry. Trying to think what the gotchas were.
We spent a long time on the data model itself. Like we
Yeah.
spent a long time on trying to figure out like, we didn't want to create like a record type for every type of field that we wanted to normalize. So like that custom field thing and making sure that this is more like very geeky engineering mindset, but we have like a source and we have like the outcome based on the same field. It's just the API name changes so that you wouldn't have to create new records and new fields. And that like then all of a sudden your vendor enrichment record would be this like gigantic, like for this source, do this, for this source, do this. And so that Emmy was the mastermind behind it. He's in the chat if you want to ask him questions. We did a lot of like reps on that to try to make sure that kind of came out. And then the other one, I think, oh yeah, I think it might be what Emmy was pointing out here, but something else that we looked at was obviously when you look at your raw, this is actually maybe, ooh, I like this question. Trevor, this might be a hot take that we did, and maybe people would not love this, but we decided to scrap all the old values that we had on the account object on a loose industry field. And we looked at normalizing all of those, which was like just data entry from years, from like individuals, from marketing, from ZoomInfo, from whatever. We had a one industry field. We decided to just be like, we're not going to normalize those. We're just going to like push our vendors to give us the new updated values that they trust and normalize that, and not try to normalize like, 5,000 values that were all slightly different. And we decided to kind of throw that out, which I think some people would be scared to just be like, we're going to kill these values that we don't know where they came from.
Yeah, because we put so much thought into like the data model, but also like, I mean, we spent like weeks with each data vendor to make sure make sure that, we captured all of their, in this case, industry values as an example. So that fed the data model and that fed the mappings. Emmy pointed out in here that, sometimes ZoomInfo industry value might change or Cognizant value might change. So we might not have a mapping, but we built that in, we built that use case in, so it's easy to just create a new mapping to suck up the new ZoomInfo value to make sure that it's standardized and normalized.
Yeah. So if a
Yeah.
new one comes in, we're not updating any of the flows or the tech. We're just creating one new record.
Yeah.
And this might have hit on this a little bit, but a couple of questions from Savannah. So yeah, one was on the kind of the data, like data decay or degradation. So like any, I guess, best practices or products, tools, solutions out there to help make sure that obviously like this data is being updated and that again it's not going, I guess, stale, right, or out of date.
Yeah. Yeah, well, so with ZoomInfo and Cognizant and D&B as well, those integrations, like as long as those our records are under management, meaning like they're linked to those tools, we just have weekly batch jobs to make sure that they're constantly being enriched. And then we have a report that shows any records that aren't quote unquote under management. So we know like we have to establish the sync or the mapping between that record and the company in ZoomInfo or Cognizant. We've to date, we've only focused on firmographic and intent. In terms of the normalization, really just firmographic, which doesn't change obviously as much as like contact level phone numbers and emails and these sorts of things. So, but still, we want to take as much headache away from the RevOps team as possible and just use the tools that we have and establish those integrations with those vendors.
Yeah, makes sense. So
And
what
we
are
do have
the
a ring lead and, things deduping in the background. So like lots
Yep.
of deduping processes to make sure that we're merging accounts, because someone could technically create an account that already exists and start throwing off some of our metrics. So got lots of deduping going on as well.
Yeah, and actually yeah, do you have, you showed, right, the ability to override like values and things like that. Is there anything on the back end in terms of having y'all do some final check or comparison or like review of like any overrides that have happened, right? Just to make sure that like, one, they're correct, two, they weren't done, I don't know, accidentally or in error. Is there anything like that?
Yeah, we have that. There's a report in that dashboard that Jen flashed up where it shows all of our overrides. So we're checking those. We see that as like a good sign that reps are actually engaging with the firmographic data and
Using the
helping us
data.
clean this up. So like we just released territories earlier this month. Our fiscal year started on February 1st. And so like it's been, we are trying to get reps to like clean up their account data and handle those overrides. And then we monitor the reports and make sure, all right, why was this overridden? Is it because ZoomInfo threw us a curveball on the mapping in an example of industry, or is it something that we need to change, like translation from ZoomInfo to SASB standard, for example?
And I think like industry probably happens less, but if you think about it, sometimes these companies have the wrong number of employees and annual revenue, et cetera. So those we expect to see higher amounts of overrides, and these fuel our, our revenue segments, right? So like if you drastically change the revenue number, it might put you in a different revenue segment, might move you from enterprise to commercial. And so this one is far more important to monitor and manage than say industry. And honestly gets more adoption because you can imagine as a rep, I'm not like reviewing industry that often. I'm like really looking at employee count, et cetera.
Yeah. And Braden asked a question on kind of contact record data. And actually, that was going to be one of the things I asked about too. So we talked about firmographic and intent data at the account level and a lot of the work that you've done behind the scenes to drive those kind of simple and useful, valuable outcomes. I guess, as you look to the future, Trevor, what are some of call it the next data management types of projects that you're working on, or do you have some things in place today that maybe exist at the contact
Yeah.
level, right? To enrich phone and email, like Braden's asking about, maybe to do checks and be like, oh, this person is or is not still at this account or company. Are there things like that that you're currently doing, or things that you're going to be evaluating in the near term
Yeah,
on that?
so that's what we're kicking off this quarter. Now that we have like a good footing to stand on with firmographic and account level, we're now getting getting into contact level. We use Zoom Info and Cognism for contact level, but what we're looking to do is add a lot of rigor on making sure that that contact data is refreshed at a higher clip.
Yeah.
Also having the data model to flag when people are moving between companies, especially when they're moving between a customer company to a prospect company, because that's we like to delight our customers. So we see that as a good signal for propensity to buy. And so we'll be looking to do much more there. We're expanding into new regions. We're growing a lot. And so like we will absolutely be looking at other data sets, either localized or expanding into data sets with our current providers to make sure that our reps have the best contact data to for the go-to-market motion in that area.
Yeah. And I'll say that is I don't know if it's a harder problem. I think we're going to be using a lot of the same first principles and same data model, et cetera.
Yeah.
But you can imagine contact level data is just a lot less trustworthy from these vendors because it changes so often. So a lot of us have probably been frustrated that we go to Zoom Info and it has somebody tagged as like their previous company from a year ago, and you go into LinkedIn and you're like, why?
Yeah.
So we're going to be dealing with a lot more of that, right? Of how do we make sure that we know and trust that title and company value. And then, same normalization. How do you take a title of director of marketing and change it to say, okay, their function is marketing and their, seniority is director level or role or whatever you want to call it. And so taking those values, and then actually what's interesting about that one, it's like splitting it into two. And you get, it's a much dirtier data set. Because people make up their own titles. So that's coming up next. We've done that before with other clients within marketing automation, that kind of contact washing machine. You create these lists that just go if title contains, and a big old list in order to normalize it too.
Yeah. Yeah. And makes sense. I think, like you said, you've started with, I think you started in the right place at the account level, because like you said, the lots of learnings that you have there now and the frequency of changes is less than anything that will happen at the contact level. And my guess is you'll probably be able to take all those things that you've already done and have a really solid starting point that you didn't have when you were first getting started with the account-based stuff. And so as we kind of wrap up in the last couple of minutes here, I guess I'm mostly curious, like, and Jen, maybe start with you, is like what are some kind of closing thoughts that you have for the crew around data, this whole notion of data management, data quality, these data related projects, right? That are, again, easy for RevOps to ignore, but obviously we talked about the impact that they can have here.
Yeah, I think my big walk away and something I think this story really tells is it's very easy to get overwhelmed by thinking about quote unquote best practice and saying, okay, in order to do a lot of this work, I have to move my company to a Snowflake and I have to implement Fivetran or, Census, and I have to kind of move and transform data and push it into all these places. And that is an awesome model. And I'm actually jazzed about all the changes going on in data architecture. But if you just wait till your company says yes to that and the change management that it takes to move there to do any of this work, you're going to be leaving a lot of money and insights on the table. And so it's okay to start, locally and take care of your data, kind of where it lives.
Yeah. Yeah. You don't need to overcomplicate things from the very beginning, but I also think you talked about how you can appropriately balance the speed and agility that you want in terms of getting started, but also being thoughtful in terms of again, kind of the the data layout thing that you all kind of spent a lot of time on, just talking to your vendors at the very beginning, right? Eliminating the need for all these custom objects and all these different property fields and using the API names, right? Those are some things where tons of value up front by being thoughtful about that.
A lot of that work goes with us wherever we take it.
Yeah. Yeah. And what about you, Trevor? What do you want to leave the crew with?
Yeah, I mean, like I feel like we framed this what I'm about to say like throughout the talk here, but like this stuff is at surface level not that sexy. You know, we like as revenue operators, we like to talk more about, you know, the sexy things that'll like that have more, you know, get more visibility and we can put on our resume. This is like I'll tell you that like for us, we saw this as a crucial pillar to like help us understand our market, like, and has led to some like very productive conversations on what geographies we can expand into this year, what industries we can expand into, how to structure the sales team by, you know, these firmographic data points that we've talked about. And like, you know, and it turned out to go a long way with the sales reps, which, you know, we all care about. When we were rolling out all of our data management structure and processes, I remember one of our best reps was like, wow, I'm not going to name the competitor, but wow, I feel bad for our competitors right now. Like, 'cause it's like,
Yeah.
and like if you can get things into a good spot and make it easy for reps and arm them with the data they need, then like it's just it's a game changer for sure.
Yeah.
And if I can
Yeah.
plug Matt real quick, let me skip that. Connect with us by all means. We'll send this content and email. We did put screenshots of the solution into this deck, so you can also kind of like peek and see that. But the big thing is, I know I already said that Trevor was my favorite. I would work for Trevor in a heartbeat, and his team is hiring. So Trevor, I don't know if you want to plug the roles that you're hiring for.
Yeah, we just filled 2 RevOps positions. We'll probably be hiring more for RevOps this year. And we're also hiring across marketing, product, engineering, design. Like all teams are essentially hiring this year. So I'm gonna link to our careers page in the chat.
Yeah.
Check it out.
And I
That's
will,
awesome.
Trevor, I'll also pop in your LinkedIn so that they can DM you if they have questions on the
There
roles.
you go. Cool.
Yeah. All right. Well, I would well, thank you all. So Jen, Trevor, thank you for the incredible discussion today and for dropping some knowledge on kind of data management and tying it to some truly respectable and admiring outcomes as well. For everyone who is in the process of jumping off, once you close out Zoom, you should get a survey to fill out about the event today. Please fill it out. It's literally 2 questions. All the feedback we collect is always super helpful. And with that, I'm going to let you all run. So Jen, Trevor, thank you again for attending and for sharing all of these great experiences with everybody, and to everyone who joined and listened in, thank you as well. But I'll let you all run since we're at top of the hour. So have a good rest of your Tuesday, and I'll see you on the flip side. So take care.
Okay.